Welcome back everybody. Apologies for the delay, but we've been set up a brand new training room and now it's complete, ready to go alongside our brand new training course, our Industrial Maintenance and Fault Finding Professional Module 3 course, to go alongside our 1 and 2 training, predominantly focusing on networking, advanced programming and drives too. If you want to check out more about that training course, click the link in the description below. Now, previously we've been having a look at GX Developer, we've also been having a look at GxWorks 2. This week we're going to be having a look at Mitsubishi's GxWorks 3 to go alongside their new FX5 CPUs. We're going to be showing you how to set up a brand new project inside the GxWorks 3 and also how to communicate with the PLC, write a basic program and then download that to the PLC. In future videos we'll be having a look at other things such as like timers and counter control and maybe how to create things like function blocks and all that too. Right, let's get into this week's video. So at the moment I've got GxWorks 3 opened up for us. What I want us to do is I want us to create a new project. So to do that I'm just going to go to project and I'm just going to go to new over here, and you'll see a dialog window pop up and it'll have the series inside of there. It'll currently have FX5 CPU. If we drop this down, there are the other CPUs that Mitsubishi provide, which is the R CPU, the Q series, the L series, the old FXs and also the NC as well. Now the old FXs require GxWorks 2 to be installed on the laptop or your PC, as what this does is it runs GxWorks 3 inside of a GxWorks 2 shell. So if you want to use anything like the FX3 CPUs, the FX4s, the FX2Ns, the 1Ns and the 0Ns, it would require GxWorks 2 to run that software for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the FX5 because that's what we're connected to. The type is just the FX5U, and the programming language, what we're going to use is we're going to use ladder. There is ST and there is FBD-LD, which is also ladder as well, but that has a unique twist to it and I might show that on a later video. But we're going to use ladder for this one here because this is the one that we all know and love. So if I just select ladder and I just select OK, it'll create this project and it should open up our work area, which it does. Now I'm just going to say OK to these dialog boxes, get rid of those. Now with GxWorks 3 it combines our GX Developer style programming and the GxWorks 2 shell, just slightly refreshed. You've got your toolbars at the top with your most common tools such as our contacts and coils and our instructions, very similar to our GX Developer. It's also got the common write to PLC, read from PLC and monitor modes that we saw inside of GxWorks 2. And on the left hand side you've got your project tree. Now one of the things that you'll notice inside your project tree first of all is just the reorder of things, but also if we go to our program there isn't just our main POU anymore, there's also these other types of interrupts that we have. So we've got the scan interrupt, which is executed on every scan of the PLC. This is similar to like your OB1 inside a Siemens. But you've also got things like your initial interrupt, fixed scan interrupts, events, standbys, etc. Now the initial scan, think of that like an OB100 inside of Siemens, or think of this like your M8002, your SM402 flag inside of Mitsubishi. We're just going to be working predominantly inside of our main POU, however, which has already been created with us. Now, at the moment, the way we are communicating with the FX5 CPU is via Ethernet, which means we have to set up IP addresses. Now, because that PLC is brand new and out the box, it doesn't have an IP address set up. If I go to my control panel over here on my laptop, and I go to network and internet, and I go to sharing center, and I select my Ethernet and go to its properties. If I then go to Internet Protocol version 4 and then select properties from here, you'll currently see that everything is set up to obtain the IP address automatically. There hasn't been any sort of manual setup on the IP addresses. I'm just going to leave it like that for now. Select OK with that, click on close, and then just close this down as well. Now, if I go to our connection destination, I can then double click my connection window and it looks slightly different to what we're used to seeing inside of GxWorks 2 or GX Developer. If I just go to other connection method, you get that similar appearance that we had in GxWorks 2 and GX Developer inside of here, where we can set up things via serial or Ethernet or anything like that. If I just cancel that, however, and I go back to my connection once again, I'm currently connected directly to the CPU. So I'm not going through any other connection method, I'm not going through any ports or anything like that, I'm just directly connected to the CPU via Ethernet. So if I click on directly connect to CPU, my adapter is my Ethernet card, which I'll just have selected there. You can see it's given an IP address to my Ethernet card. That there is just automatically being assigned. And you'll see here communications test. Now, even though this PLC doesn't have any sort of IP address set up, if I go to communications test, it'll locate that CPU and successfully connect to that CPU, which is fantastic for us because I haven't set up anything yet in terms of Ethernet. All I've done is just clipped it in on both ends and just off we went. A lot of other PLCs would throw up a lot of hissy fits for that. If we then just say OK on that side and OK on that side, that there is ultimately my communications at the moment set up. I've got a blank program set up here at the moment too. If I just go back to my navigation, what I'll do is I'll just go to convert and rebuild all, very similar to GxWorks 2, and I'm just going to say OK on that. And if I open up my output window, which is just this little box over here, it'll show you our output window at the bottom, 0 errors, 0 warnings. I'm happy with that. So what I'm now going to do is I'm actually going to write this project to our PLC just by clicking this write to PLC button. If I just click on that, you'll see the transfer selection window appear, asking you what do you want to transfer over, parameters, global labels, program, device memory, etc. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to select the parameter and program. So it's going to send over all of our PLC parameters that we've set up or that we haven't set up in this PLC, and it's going to also send over the PLC program, which is just this blank program. And I'm just going to say execute. It'll mention here that we have to switch the CPU to stop, or it's going to do a remote stop, which is okay by us. And it's then going to say, do you want to transfer all this over as it already exists inside of our PLC? I'm just going to say yes to all. And there we go. If I just click on close, it'll then say, please reset the CPU module to run it. Now what this has done, because we've sent in new parameters to the CPU needs a reset similar to a power cycle. Now on the FX5 CPUs, they have an actual reset selection on their selector switch. They've got run, they've got stop, and then they've got reset. All I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to that PLC, select reset and hold it down, and what we should see is the error light begin to flash. Then what I'll do is I'll switch it back to run, and then we should see it go into run mode. So let's have a go at doing that right now. I'm just going to select OK on that, I'm going to close that down, and then I'm going to go and do the reset on the PLC. Okay, so I've just reset the CPU there and put it back into run mode. No error lights came on, it's just back into run mode as normal now. And if I just go to start monitoring, it'll then connect to the PLC, and we are now monitoring the actual PLC itself. You can see up here we've got the scan cycle, which is currently 0.385 milliseconds, so pretty damn quick. But that's the actual communications to that PLC setup. And I've not set up any IP address. My laptop IP address isn't set up, everything's just communicating and I'm talking away. Now on the shop floor that might not be a great thing, because on the shop floor you might put that PLC onto a network. So how do we actually set up an IP address for that PLC? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect from the PLC, just go to stop monitoring. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open up our parameter window at the bottom left here. I'm then going to open up FX5 CPU, module parameter, and inside of there you'll see Ethernet port. If we just double click our Ethernet port, and inside of here, this is where we can set everything up. If I now go to my IP address, I can then type in the IP address that I want. So if I use like 192.168, and what I'll do is I'll use something like 1, and I'll set the PLC as 10. I'll get our subnet mask, and that'll be 255.255.255.0. And then what I'll do is I'll just check that, make sure everything seems okay, which it is, and I'm just going to press the apply button, which is on the bottom right of our console, and that there has been applied. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this down. If I now go back to my connection destination, double click connection, directly connect to CPU, you'll see that my IP address is 169.254.3814. If I now say communication test, it's still connecting to the PLC because that hasn't had it downloaded just yet. If I say OK to that, go back to my navigation, I then just do a quick rebuild all, make sure everything checks out okay. Just check my output window, make sure everything's okay, which it is, and then write this to the PLC. I'm going to have the parameter, I'm then going to have my program, and I'm then going to execute that once again. It'll say it's going to knock it into stop mode, yes to all, and it's going to begin downloading to the PLC. Close that. Once it's downloaded, because I've updated the parameters, the PLC needs to reset, so I'll go and reset that again, and we'll pick up from where we left off. Say OK to that, and let's go reset the CPU. So now that's the PLC with the IP address set up. If I go to connection destination, double click connection, directly to connect to the CPU, 169.254.3814, and say connection test, it can still connect to that CPU as long as I've got that Ethernet connection there. Say OK to that, say OK to that, but what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go to my control panel, and I'm actually going to set up my IP address. So I'm going to go to Network and Internet, Network and Sharing Center, select on Ethernet, Properties, and select my Internet Protocol version 4, Properties, and use following IP address. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the IP address of my laptop to match the similar IP address of my PLC. So I need to have the following: 192.168.1, and I'll just give it a different unit address. I'll use something like .5, so it's separated from my PLC, but it's on the same network. Whenever you're working with networks, whenever you work with PLCs, it's always best to have it on the same network, just with a different identifier itself. Select on the subnet mask, select OK on that, close that down, close that down, close that down. Go to connection over here, directly connect to CPU, and just select my Ethernet card again, connection test, and it should pop up with a little dialog window saying that it's going to disconnect my personal laptop from whatever else it's connected to. Just say yes to that, and it still successfully connects to the CPU. So actually communicating with this PLC directly via the CPU is pretty user friendly. It's very flexible when it comes to the IP addresses, whether the PLC's been set up with an IP address or not. I'm now just going to say OK to that, OK to that, go back to my navigation, and just do a quick rebuild all, OK on that side, and download this to the PLC once again. I'll just download the program now. I don't need to download the parameter, nothing's changed on that side. Execute that. It'll ask me, do I want to switch it to stop mode? Say yes to that, yes to all, and download the program, close that side, switch it back into remote run, and there we go. Now, writing to an FX5 CPU is very similar to using GxDeveloper, especially when inside the ladder format. When I've got this rung over here, I can simply use Shift Insert, similar to earlier videos, and it'll insert some rows inside of my program, which means if I now use F5, it'll allow me to insert a normally open contact. If I then type in here M0, and then I go to F7 and type in Y0, if I F4 that, and I go to rebuild all, just making sure everything looks okay from here, and I say write to CPU, there's my program selected. If I execute that, it'll ask me, do you want to switch it to stop mode? I'll say yes to that, I'll say yes to all, and it'll then switch us back to run, and then we can test out this program live. Click on close, say yes, switching it back to remote run, close that down. Let's go into monitor mode, so let's view the program working. And if I right click this tag, go to debug and click on modify value. Now this won't bring up a dialog window similar to GxWorks 2 where I can switch it on and off. It'll just directly modify the value to on, so be careful with this. If I click on modify value, that contact will then close, my output coil will then turn on. If I right click this, go back to debug, click on modify value, it'll then switch it off. Very straightforward programming, just watch out with that modify value. It's not like GxWorks 2 where it brings up a dialog window and you can just simply modify it from the window, selecting turning it on, selecting turning it off. It directly references it from that option in that menu there, so be very careful when you're doing that. But very similar to using GxWorks 2 with a bit of a hint of GX Developer when writing the code itself. Anyways, I hope you've enjoyed this brief introduction to GxWorks 3. If you want to learn more about PLC programming, feel free to visit our website www.scantime.co.uk, where you can access a multitude of courses ranging from universal PLC programming, teaching you PLC programming from scratch, all the way up to programming specific PLCs such as Siemens Step 7 Professional, RSLogix 5000, Siemens TIA Portal, etc. We look forward to seeing you on board, and I'll see you again next time.